What the heck is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Yeah.Whatever podcast. My name is Frank Helmstetter. Thank you so much for joining me today. It is a beautiful Monday here in Seattle, Washington, and we are here with the Yeah.Whatever podcast, second episode on video. Super excited to be doing this, guys. If you liked the last video, please go ahead and like that video, like this one if you like this one. Physically like, it helps with the YouTube algorithm. It helps me know what's coming off positively and what's coming off negatively, whatever. Please comment, give me suggestions, anything like that. I did get a suggestion on my last video to cover immigration and how that's playing into COVID cases as we let people in through the south border. Is that truly bringing up COVID cases, or is it more of a worrisome thing as we internally deal with COVID? So that's something I'm working on. I'm not very well versed in immigration policy, so it's going to take me some time to truly feel comfortable enough to speak on that fairly and give it actual research and time to think about what my opinion on that subject is. But nonetheless, I do read those comments, so if you have any suggestions for me, please let me know. Lastly, guys, if you please could subscribe to the channel below, the Yeah.Whatever podcast, please go ahead and subscribe. It helps me tremendously, and it's very easy for you to do. All you have to do is have a YouTube account and hit subscribe, and you are there. It requires no commitment on your part whatsoever, so please do that, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And this is episode 2 of the Yeah.Whatever podcast on video. Today, guys, we are talking about food insecurity in America, how we have much more hungry people than you would probably think. We're talking about wealth inequality and how that plays into sort of the ridiculousness of how this country has devolved from a democracy into what I personally see as an oligarchical society, where a few people have all of the power and influence over everyone else. We like to think of ourselves as a democracy, but when we have people that are literally kings who can control, can sway political policy, can have a hand in elections, all of that good stuff, when we have people that, based on their wealth, can influence the outcome of certain things so tremendously, and there are only a few people who can do that and have so much power, that is an oligarchy. That is not a democracy. So we're going to dive into kind of how, obviously Beth Jesnos is the reigning king, of ultimate wealth in this country and ultimate exploitation of his workers, the embodiment of unregulated capitalism is Jeff Bezos, someone who is so rich because he is able to hoard wealth. Whether or not that is actually in cash flow or in assets, it doesn't matter to me. So I want to get that out of the way right at the beginning, is that it doesn't matter if Jeff Bezos' salary is $81,000 a year, which is great for the average person. So even if he made that much money, that's an amazing salary. But it's not about his salary. It's about the amount of wealth that he controls in general. I don't care if it's in stocks. I don't care if it's in parts of the company and owning stock in Amazon. It doesn't matter to me. What matters is that we have no regulation about how much wealth one singular entity or person can control. So we're going to play, food insecurity. We're going to go into Jeff Bezos and kind of just ultimate pictures of wealth in this country and how that leads to more of an oligarchical existence rather than a true democracy. And we're also going to talk about how the United States is the most overworked nation in the world, in the developed world, excuse me. Ultimately, this episode is about how our lack of regulation for big business is allowing employers to exploit and underpay its workers, and how that leads into massive amounts of food insecurity, leads to hunger and not being able to pay basic rent costs in this country anymore. Here we go. So, food insecurity in the U.S. by the numbers, okay? We have, this is an NPR article. You should be able to see this on screen. Obviously, COVID-19 has continued to spread, and consequently, more people are food insecure and out of work. So this is exacerbating the already prevalent issue of hunger in this country. Nearly 1 in 4 households have experienced food insecurity this year. Even before the pandemic hit, some 13.7 million households, or 10.5% of all U.S. households, experienced food insecurity at some point during 2019, according to data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That works out to more than 35 million Americans who are either unable to acquire enough food to meet their needs or uncertain of where their next meal might come from last year. The coronavirus pandemic has only worsened the problem. According to one estimate by researchers at Northwestern University, food insecurity more than doubled as a result of the economic crisis brought on by the outbreak, hitting as much as 23% of households this year. Millions more children are experiencing food insecurity, 1.5 times more likely to experience food insecurity than households without children. According to the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, reported that 13.6% of households with children experienced food insecurity last year. That's more than 5 million children who lived in these homes, meaning that some 13.9 million children lived in a household characterized by child food insecurity. We're next going to go to feedingamerica.org. This has some good resources as well. It talks about hunger in America. So it says here, according to them, in a wake of COVID-19 pandemic, unemployment and food insecurity soared. More than 42 million people may face hunger because of coronavirus. I think that food insecurity was already an issue, and so I don't want anyone to think that this is because of the coronavirus pandemic. It has made it worse. Like we have more people hungry now because people are out of work because of the pandemic. So yeah, this has good resources as well. This is basically just the premise that I'm operating off of, because I want to explain why it is so important to regulate our businesses more. The reason that businesses are allowed to pay poverty wages is because we have no regulation that tells them they cannot do that. We barely even scratch the surface in terms of like break times, in terms of, time off, and if a company needs to offer healthcare, pension plans, all of that stuff. America is so against regulating business that those businesses, and I think it's immoral, but to be fair, those businesses are simply playing the hand that they're dealt. Like, if their goal is to make as much money as possible and cut costs as much as possible, they're going to take advantage of the hand that they're dealt. And in America, when we don't have any regulation for these businesses to treat employees in a more humane fashion, those businesses are going to take advantage of that. So I don't blame the individual businesses as it stands. Like, I think it's immoral and I think it's wrong, but it's like, what do you expect when the country they're operating in does not ever give them any sort of like, okay, you have to stay within the confines of this basic treatment. Like, these people have to be treated in a certain way or else you cannot exist in this country. We have minimal amounts of regulation, but not nearly as much as we should, and we can see how this is playing into things like food insecurity, like poverty wages. Like, our current minimum wage is a laughable thing. Like, it is to the point where people literally are working 90 hours a week just to pay rent costs. Like, so I just wanted to sort of point out that food insecurity is a real thing, and a lot of people don't think about that. Like, a lot of people I know, including myself, don't really pay attention to the millions of people who don't have access to food, who are, experiencing problems like this every day. And that's about 10% of the US population is going through this, like 10%. And we don't like to, I feel like a lot of Americans don't like to think of America as like what they would call like a third world country, because we are blessed in many different ways. Like, we have, America is a very wealthy country. But the point is that the way that money is being spent, or not being spent rather, on the American people is leading to outcomes which are very similar to those that you would find in third world countries. We have so much money. So like, the US is not a third world country because we have so much money, but the way that we spend our money, or the fact that we don't pour it back into programs for Americans, into infrastructure, into paying Americans a livable wage, that fact is the outcomes of how we don't spend money on that makes us look like as if we are a third world country. So my point is that we need to prioritize, regulating businesses to the point where they have to pay their workers fairly, all of that good stuff. Like, that is the point here. It's not that America doesn't have the resources. We have more than enough resources to do this. It's just the fact that we don't. That's the simple fact, is we just don't use it on American people, on social safety nets, on the working class at all. We have no universal health care. Hunger in America is a prevalent issue, and it's not due to a lack of money. It's not due to the fact that we can't afford to be giving these people money for food. It's the fact that we just don't do that. We have no regulation in place that says that, like, we need basic human rights and social safety nets to ensure that this doesn't happen to our citizens, right? So that's the point I'm trying to make here. Now, let's get into, like, wealth inequality. So today, of all days, as I was filming this video, I found out Jeff Bezos is actually no longer the richest person on the planet. His net worth dropped $13.9 billion in one day. So insane. I mean, now I can't even make a video about this because Jeff is just simply too poor now. I mean, he only has, let's see. Oh, no. Okay. Wait a second. Now he only has 192.6 billion now. It was over 200. But now that it's 192.6 billion, I don't really know if I can really make the same points I was making. Because that's just such a little amount of money for someone to be living off of. No. He is still astronomically wealthy. We all know this. He runs, so obviously Jeff Bezos his origin was Amazon. It is, a company that is astronomically rich and that he sees the primary benefits of. He sees basically all of the money and wealth that Amazon accumulates and its workers accumulate. Jeff Bezos is the person who has made the most profit off of that business. Here's the thing. As long as we exist under a capitalist structure, exploitation of workers is definitionally, it is absolutely necessary for capitalism to exist. You cannot have a system of government under capitalism in which no person is exploited. Workers are exploited because, for instance, like, if someone is packaging all of Amazon's packages in their warehouses, right? They are literally the mechanism by which the company runs. Even though they are the people that are making that happen, they don't see any of the money that comes from that work. Like, they are getting profit to the company of Amazon, but they are not seeing any of the profit that they are single-handedly responsible for making happen. So that's what I mean, is that capitalism cannot exist unless you have some form of exploitation. So in the case of Amazon, I think that this is way too high of a wealth difference. There can be businesses, like small businesses. I understand when, the owner might make, more money than the employees, because that's literally like, you have to have that happen for capitalism to be existent. Like we already discussed this. But there comes a point where, like, there is so much wealth that has been accumulated from Amazon's working class and their efforts, and meanwhile we are hearing stories about how Amazon employees literally are pissing in bottles because they are unable to take breaks because they're so busy. So we have people pissing in bottles. Meanwhile, the guy who is yielding and getting all the profits from these endeavors is hovering at a worth of $192 billion. And that is literally impossible to spend in one lifetime. We've reached a point where it is absolutely insane how much money Jeff Bezos and people like him have. Whether or not it's in salary or in assets, it is unreal that we do not tax this more, that we do not require these people to give more money back. And this is what I'm talking about earlier with oligarchy. Like, Bill Gates has so much money that he has single-handedly influenced elections. When you have so much money that you literally can single-handedly, make an election come the way that you want it to. Like, I could never, ever afford a personal ad campaign for a political candidate. I could not afford to do that. If progressive people like myself could afford to do that, we would see more progressive candidates. But Bill Gates and these billionaires not only have the ability to do this, not only have the ability to literally single-handedly, have their way in constructing ad campaigns and different various routes to make a certain political candidate come to power that they want to happen. But also you have to keep in mind that as people that are making this much money because of a lack of regulation, who do you think they're going to get into office? Who do you think they want to be in office? Do you think that they want progressives who want to regulate them more? Or do you think they want people in office who don't give a shit and who will allow big businesses to do whatever they want to exist and to continue exploiting their workers and to continue hoarding massive amounts of money? Who do you think they're going to want in? Of course it's going to be the latter. Then it will just continue where he is able to get in candidates who won't keep him in check. And then because of his wealth and not being kept in check, he will be able to influence candidates to get into who will never keep him in check. That's literally what we're living under. And that is an oligarchy. I could literally just look up the definition of an oligarchy right now. Watch this. I love how Olive Garden came up. That's awesome. Oligarchy. A small group of people having control of a country, organization, or institution. What does it sound like? What does that sound like? That literally is exactly what I'm describing. That we live under an oligarchy. We are not a democracy. Because a single person, especially under the Electoral College, which should be abolished. It's unreal that we still have the Electoral College. That can be a whole nother video. I'm not even going to dive into that. But we as people, in California, when I was growing up, if I voted for a Republican candidate, my vote meant absolutely nothing. Literally, I could piss in the wind and get the same amount of things done. We always tell ourselves that we are a democracy, and yet, you and I have no political power. We could vote and use our one vote to maybe get something passed, but people that have this amount of money can literally influence entire elections. So my point here in all of this is just to establish that we need to understand that we are living in an oligarchy. They can just come together with all of their resources and say, okay, who do we want to win this election? 9 times out of 10, that effort will beat any grassroots organization. Any progressive organization will never be able to fend up and play up against people who have this much power and influence. It's unreal. It's unreal that we think that we fool ourselves into thinking that we are an actual democracy anymore. The wealth inequality has skyrocketed, and there are people who literally can just influence elections on their own. And like I said, it's a vicious cycle because the people that they get into office are the people that they know will never keep them in check. I could say all of this. I could say we're an oligarchy. I could say that there's millions of Americans that are food insecure. I still have people that are critical of what I believe in, who will say but that's the American dream, right? People like Bill Gates, people like Jeff Bezos, like Steve Jobs, whoever it is, started out poor, maybe. I know some of them didn't. Some of them had generational wealth that allowed them to make it to a certain level where they could start, with a great advantage. Regardless, though, for the most part, these people made it to the top through their own hard work. That's fine. I understand that. Where there's a fundamental difference in what we believe in is that I don't think that we should ever reach a point where a single person is allowed to have this much money. If you think for a second that these people should be allowed to have this much money, we are already operating from a different opinion, because I don't think that any person should be able to have, honestly, I would cut it off at $1 billion. I would say that a single person should never be able to have more money to their name than $1 billion. Like, why are we allowing people like this to exist when we should have extremely heavy taxation and funnel that money into programs which do not allow 10% of our country, the wealthiest country in the developed world, to be food insecure? They could just keep accumulating wealth. They'll never spend it. And meanwhile, like people like Jeff Bezos have their employees pissing and shitting in bottles on their delivery routes because they don't have enough time to make their delivery routes. They get paid the bare minimum wage. All of their efforts to unionize so that they get more benefits are shut down. What is this? It's insane that every effort to, get better benefits, to get better pay is shut down. There are stories where people are pissing in bottles because they literally cannot finish their delivery routes for Amazon in time. And then Amazon comes out and denies it. And then they come back after it's proven to be true and they say, oh, sorry for denying it. Also, our CEO just launched himself into space for 11 minutes. Look at this stat. This is unreal, dude. Like, this is just like pointless facts. Like, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things because like who would do this? But look at this. He could buy, I thought this was crazy. He could have enough Rolex watches to wear one every single day, a new one every day for 35,000 years. And his employees are saying, can we have healthcare, dog? Can we unionize so that we have any amount of benefits for our work? He could buy 4,280 mansions. And his workers are, some of them are probably food insecure. They literally they don't have time to go to the bathroom. They can't unionize. Like, how much more needs to be said about this? Now, let me show you this. I don't know where I didn't mean to click on. Here we go. So, I could say all of that stuff, right? But there would still be people who think like, well, just work harder. Like, that's literally some opinion. I think that's fucking stupid. But some people will literally say like, just work harder, make your way to the top, and then you will be able to exploit the working class for your benefit. Like, as if I would want to do that. But let's play devil's advocate and say, even if I wanted to work extremely hard and make it to the top like that big, let me show you the complications of what you were saying. It's not just America, it's current America. Like, in other words, like, it wasn't always like this. Like, we were never this terrible with our work-to-life balance. Like, in 1960, 20% of mothers worked. Nowadays, 70% of American children live in households where all adults are employed. In other words, like, why do you think that is? Why do you think that in 1960, only 20% of mothers had to work? It's because the fathers, or the father figures in these families, had jobs which paid enough for them to be able to afford to stay at home. Now, you can see how over time, we have been paid consistently less and less for the same jobs. And that is why, and housing costs are astronomically higher. So that is why people cannot afford this, to live here. And they are working an extreme amount of hours just to live. The U.S. is the only country in the Americas without a national paid parental leave benefit. The average is over 12 weeks of paid leave anywhere other than Europe and over 20 weeks in Europe. 0 industrialized nations are without a mandatory option for new parents to take parental leave, that is, except for the United States. Here we go. Average American work hours. In the U.S., 85.8% of males and 66.5% of females work more than 40 hours a week. I don't know about you guys, but I literally struggle just to work a full-time job. Like, especially considering that I'm in customer service, like, it takes so much mental and physical energy to make yourself work 5 days out of every week of your existence. You have to spend 8 hours a day doing something that is just like frustrating. Look at this. 85% of males and 66.5% of females work More than 40 hours a week. Americans work 137 more hours per year than Japanese workers, 260 hours more per year than British workers, and 499 more hours per year than French workers. There's no federal law requiring paid sick days in the United States. We have no legally mandated annual leave. We are the only industrialized country in the world that has no legally mandated annual leave. So in other words, like companies can literally, you could just never take a vacation. You could work 52 weeks out of the year. You could work 5 days a week. Every single day. Some people also, let's keep in mind, some people work more than 5 days a week. Some work 6. So you literally have 1 day a week to yourself every year. That's awesome. So my point is like, I could say all of this stuff about being an oligarchy, about all of these people who are massively successful and why I think that that's wrong. But I will still have people who tell me, one second. I could still have people who tell me that, you know, it's just that's the game. That's the game of capitalism, right? Just work hard and you will make it, which is literally just incorrect. Like 99% of the time, someone could bust their ass every single day and never make enough money to see anything other than just basic comfortability. That's basically how America works. My whole point is that we need regulation for this. We need regulation. Because as long as we allow this to be practiced by our businesses, as long as we allow businesses like Amazon to treat their employees like shit no matter what, it won't change, because it's in the best interest of exploitative businesses under capitalism to utilize the route that saves them the most amount of money. But if the government says you literally are not allowed to exist in this country unless you provide people with basic necessities for living, fair wages, healthcare, pension plans, whatever it is, if they say you are not allowed to exist unless this happens, those companies will abide. Like it's literally just our unwillingness to regulate business. And it's our unwillingness to regulate businesses, to take the taxation, it's our unwillingness to tax people like Jeff Bezos more, funnel that money into programs that do not allow citizens in the most rich country in the Western world, in the world, the most rich country, that if we funneled those taxes into programs which, gave food to the food insecure, that would be a more fruitful effort than allowing someone to sit on a pile of cash their entire life and never spend it. That we're almost we are to the point where in most like metropolitan areas, $15 an hour is not even enough money now. Like it literally is like still a poverty level wage. Here's something really interesting. So there's a debate on whether or not the minimum wage was ever meant to be a livable wage. The person who established it, FDR, literally said, by living wages, I mean more than a bare subsistence. Dude, this is hilarious. I literally can't say this. By living wages, I mean more than a bare subsistence. Dude, I literally cannot say this word right now. Like, bare subsistence. Subsistence. Dude, this is going to be a funny part of this video. I'm just going to like hyper focus on this. Okay. FDR said, by living wages, I mean more than a bare subsistence. Subsistence. Dude, what is happening, right? He literally intended the minimum wage to be more than the wages, or he means, look, I mean the wages of a decent living. Do you think any of these people that work at Wendy's, that work at all of these places like Amazon, that get paid poverty level wages, do you think that they, for a second, find that they are living that they make wages of a decent living? No, absolutely not. That's why we're seeing all of these, pro-union movements, why we're seeing all of this push for universal health care, social safety nets. Like, it's because our minimum wage is nowhere near what FDR intended it to be anymore. We haven't even raised the minimum wage since July of 2009, where it increased to $7.25 an hour, dog. $7.25. Look at this. If you operate under the $7.25 per hour, which a lot of states still have that. So if you're not from America, some states have higher state minimum wages. So like in Washington, it's like $13 an hour, like has to be. So this is for states that still pay the federal minimum wage, which there are a lot of those. So if you operate under that assumption, the current minimum wage is not a livable wage. It's a poverty wage. A full-time employee, if you work 40 hours a week for all 52 weeks, that means you have no vacation. You work 8-hour days, 5 days a week, the entire year. Under that minimum wage, you will make $15,000 a year. The literal Census Bureau puts the poverty line for one person under the age of 65 at $13,000 a year. That means you are making $1,500 a year over the poverty line under our federal minimum wage. And companies like this have employees who have enough money to orbit the stratosphere, who can literally launch themselves into space, can buy 35,000 Rolexes, like whatever the fuck it is, it doesn't matter. Like, the point is this is insane that we are literally allowing this to happen. The cost of living has skyrocketed and minimum wage has remained stagnant. That's the point here. The point is that we do not pay our workers enough. 15 hours is no longer a livable wage in so many different places. That's the point. Okay, so my point is like, if we had regulation where businesses had to pay livable wages, this conversation wouldn't even need to be happening. Like, it is so it's so within the means of like a company like Amazon to pay their employees a fair wage, to pay for their healthcare costs. All of that could be afforded. And you want to know how I know this? I know this because in places like Denmark, there was a claim that workers in a McDonald's Denmark make $22 an hour. Now, the reason McDonald's is a good example is because it is an international company that has, I think there's a McDonald's in every country except like North Korea and I think one other place. So McDonald's is literally everywhere in this world. So, huge company. So, you might be asking yourself, why is it that McDonald's in a different country is willing to pay the equivalent of $22 an hour? And this is converted. Like, so, in other words, the people in Denmark make the equivalent of what it would be $22 an hour in America. So it's not saying that they make 22 Denmark dollars or whatever that is. Like, it is converted to account for the fact that there is a different currency. So you might be asking yourself, why do companies like McDonald's, why are they able to, or why do they pay their workers more in Denmark? It's because the government says you have to do this. You have to pay them a fair wage. So because of regulation, these workers make $22 an hour, and everyone thought this was fake. So it's mostly true based on Snopes. The origin of it was a tweet from AOC. She says, it's utterly embarrassing that pay people enough to live is a stance that's even up for debate. That's true. I don't know how it's a debate. McD's workers in Denmark are paid $22 an hour plus 6 weeks paid vacation. Bro, excuse me. Find a company, like a corporation in this country that allows you to have a month and a half worth of paid vacation, much less a fucking McDonald's. A fucking McDonald's in Denmark gives you 6 weeks paid vacation. So anyways, everyone thought this was fake, but it turns out it's largely accurate. McDonald's workers in Denmark truly make more than $20 an hour, and they truly get paid 6 weeks of paid vacation. We reached out to 3F, the union that represents fast food workers in Denmark, to get some more information about the wages at McDonald's. The union representative told us that the pay scheme in Denmark isn't as simple as saying all employees make $22 an hour. The majority of McDonald's workers in Denmark are part-time and currently receive a base pay of about $20 an hour. Wow. Damn. Well, I guess now that it's only $20 an hour, that makes a difference. So the point is it's not exactly 22, but even $20 an hour compared to the fight for literally just paying people 15 in America is great. So I don't even care. Even if it's 20, that's fine. Employees earn additional wages for working off-hour shifts, overtime, and holidays. Employees over the age of 20 also receive a pension plan. You work at a McDonald's in Denmark and you get a fucking pension plan, dog. Like, how are we okay with the current conditions we exist under? I don't understand. They get paid vacations. Of course they get paid why wouldn't they, right? It's not America. Of course they're treated with dignity. Of course the one life you get to live is not, ruled by working, Like in America, life is synonymous with working. In other countries, working is one part of your entire existence, of the cycle of life. That's the difference here. That and unregulated business and capitalism is the reason that this exists in America, or that this doesn't exist in America. So, guys, thanks for listening this week to the Yeah.Whatever podcast. My point, the entire point of this entire podcast this week, is just to simply say it is unreal that this exists, first of all, and the way to combat this is to allow unions to exist and to regulate how much money one person can actually own without taxing it heavily and funneling it back into social programs. It's all about priorities here. Like, if we used the taxation and we taxed our billionaires fairly, if we use those tax dollars to fund programs for the food insecure, if we used it for, combating hunger in America, rather than letting billionaires simply just sit on massive amounts of wealth, never do anything with that wealth except every once in a while, maybe I'll start a space company and launch into space. If we regulate that, we could see such a more equitable society. It is insane. Like, we simply just don't do it. We have no business regulation, and for that reason, that's the reason that, like, McDonald's in Denmark can afford, of course they can afford it, it's McDonald's, can afford to pay their workers a fair wage, to give them pension plans, paid time off, whatever it is. The reason is because those countries regulate the businesses. That's the reason. That's it. So what I'm calling for here is for you to think about that. Think about what it means when America refuses to have social safety nets and regulate all of this shit that allows people to literally make astronomical amounts of money and have their underlings pissing and shitting in bottles on their delivery routes, getting paid no fair wages, and have no healthcare plan, no pension plan, no unionization is allowed. Think about it, guys. Legitimately, please think about it. If you want me to talk more about this topic, please comment below. I'd love to hear your feedback on this video. I'd love to continue this discussion next week. I can cover a little bit more. If you have resources for me that you want me to look at and review, please give it to me. I would love to learn more about this topic. I am by no means perfect in this. Like, I understand that I do not know everything. So if there are things that, solidify what I'm saying, or if there are things that, arguably talk the opposite of what I'm saying, I would love to see it regardless. So please comment below those resources. Please like and subscribe this video if you enjoyed it. And we will see you for next week's episode of the Yeah.Whatever podcast very soon, guys. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Have an awesome day.